After 8 long months, we finally got our second look at Fire Emblem Fortune's Weave. And of course, that means it's also time to grab that magnifying glass and take a closer look at every little detail this trailer showed us. And let's immediately start with the opening shot, which shows us the setting for the game, the Dagdan Empire and the neighboring kingdom of Arago. And if the first sounds familiar, you are spot on. Dagda was already mentioned in Three Houses and was described as a continent southwest of Fodland. It is where Shamir is from, and while it doesn't outright appear in-game, not even in Paralogs, we do know war was waged between Dagdar and the archipelago of Brigid, which is a land Petra is the ruler of. Brigid is not visible in this first shot, but it does appear in the poster of the map, which is revealed at the complete end of the trailer when they reveal the Dagdan collection. It is also worth pointing out that during the events of Three Houses, Dagda is never referred to as the Dagdan Empire, suggesting it wasn't an empire back in those days. And yes, I am saying Fortune's Weave is a Three Houses sequel, more on that later. For now, let's zoom in on this map as best as we can, although I can't say I'm able to deduce every word written here. First of all, it's interesting to mention that this opening shot of the trailer pretty much cuts off a significant part of the poster, including the kingdom of Saramis and the kingdom of Brezarand, both to the south of Arago. Neither of these locations are mentioned in Three Houses. Even further south lies Mosa, and to the east of Dagda is a new land I think is called Banba, but I wouldn't be surprised if these lands aren't visited in-game, perhaps only mentioned. Furthermore, we can make out several names of major regions in these lands, like Electra, Castalia and Idia in Dagda, Lambeth, Solidus, Philia, Isiades and Melius in Arago, Pasifra and Braxifia in Brezarand, and finally Sephrolon in Saramis. That is based on how I interpret the map, to be fair, there are no clear borders here. There is one more location on the map that the game certainly wants you to spot, and that is Amalfia, the central location that connects Dagda to the lands to the west, and the spot where the capital city Daxian is located. This is where the heroic games are held, it is the central location seen in both this trailer and quite frequently in the first trailer as well. The voiceover here also mentions this land too is ruled by the gods, which we know are different from the gods in Fodlan. Shamir says that outright in Three Hopes. In fact, according to her, the pagan altar in Abyss depicts the Dagdan god of fate, so maybe we'll actually see them in Fortune's Weave. Thanks to the location of Brigid, which appears in the map of Three Houses and Fortune's Weave, we can now also combine the maps together to get a sense of where the game actually takes place. Oh, and should you be wondering, yes, the President set in Fodlan continues. A lot of these new locations are named after old Fire Emblem characters. Dagda was already named after Dagdar, Brigid after, well, Brigid, and we now also have the Danan Sea, named after Danan, all from genealogy of the Holy War. Moving on, we get some shots we've already seen before, but are then shown two new ones, showing green and red armored guys fighting in the tournament. Good to see that tradition is sticking around. What I am a little conflicted on though is if this red armored unit is the same guy we see in the audience in the first trailer. They have the same hair color and their face looks similar too, but the hairstyle is different and I believe they have different eye colors as well. So I am inclined to say they're separate characters, but I could be deceived by how, just like in Engage, characters may have different looks in and outside of battle. That could explain a different hairstyle, also a result of the hairband this guy wears in battle. It is then time for a closer look at the four main characters of Fortune's Weave, starting, just like 8 months ago, with Kai. We already knew he was a country boy looking to save his father, but we now learn his father is imprisoned, as well as the fact he is from a place called Ribaira Village. It's probably quite small and insignificant, as it isn't located anywhere on the map. Later shots of Kai's side of the story reveal several of his allies, like Pointy Ear Woman, which is actually noteworthy. The only pointy-eared people we had seen so far are Nagapeteans, but those always have green hair, as well as Pouting Boy, Knight who actually looks very closely like Kai, so maybe he's related, as well as Glasses Girl, who was frequently seen alongside Kai in the first trailer, is probably his closest friend and ally. In this shot, he is surrounded by enemies alongside Glasses Girl and Pouting Boy, so it is also possible the other two characters are actually not his allies and NPCs he was meeting with. We later see Kai use his own special move, which is currently unnamed but looks incredibly powerful. Not only does it have a range of at least 7, from what I can tell, it also has a massive splash effect targeting nearby tiles. It is worth pointing out though, it costs Kai 14 HP to perform. This shot also gives us some faint looks at his allies, but it's impossible to discern who they are without portraits visible. This shot does show though that Kai is paired up or has an adjutant, to use the Three Houses term, a budding cavalier. We later also heard Kai say a quick voice line, and I gotta say, I would be shocked if it turns out he isn't voiced by Zeno Robinson, who you may know as Fogado from Engage. The Japanese website for the game actually already reveals some voice actors, but the English unfortunately does not. Next up is Dietrich, who was one of the characters we learned quite a bit about already in the first trailer. To summarize, he's probably from Fogland, he is the spitting image of Mercedes and Jeritza and uses a hero's relic. It is not outright said in this trailer either that Dietrich is from Fogland, as in born there, but it does appear to be likely. He tells Kai in a later shot that his forebears are from Fogland, we see him arrive by boat in trailer 1, and he mentions his weapon was used to slay gods in Fogland. This is undoubtedly a reference to the events of Three Houses, confirming that Fortune's Weave is set long after it. We get even more confirmation of that later too. But first, let's take a look at Dietrich's allies in the trailer, which include a blue-haired girl, older priest man, and male happy lookalike, as well as Ursula, a hunter who we see use the Deadeye combat art to take out an enemy. But before we highlight that, guys, elephant mount spotted. It's happening, we're getting our elephant. Anyway, this enemy Ursula is targeting is an Aragonian soldier, so from the kingdom of Arago, which we talked about before, and it is worth pointing out that he, just like all other generic units, doesn't have a portrait, simply a black image. I initially theorized this was a placeholder when I spotted it in trailer 1, but so close to release that looks unlikely. It seems like generic units won't have portraits with faces this time around, unfortunately. And it's not because it's some shadow creature either, this is a normal person from what we can tell in the following shot where he is taken out. Regarding Ursula though, I do feel like I have to point out she bears a strong resemblance to Marianne. The hair color matches and the hairstyle similar too, even if personality wise she appears quite more stoic and cool. She also has the crest of the beast as seen in this battle preparation screen, so there is probably some connection there. Combine that with the happy looking fellow we saw just now and Dietrich himself, and I can't help but wonder whether Dietrich's army in general will feature a lot of characters with Fogland heritage. Maybe they're a certain ethnic group bonding together, or a mercenary team with members that all hail from Fogland originally. We also get a brief shot of Dietrich's special technique, Moving Shadow, which was already revealed in trailer 1, so no point in dwelling on that now. Oh, and should you be thinking, man, this Dietrich guy looks edgy as hell, I do think it's worth pointing out the game refers to him as elegant. Thought that was an interesting choice of words. Then we have Theodora, Queen of Soramis, which is the land only visible on the poster to the south of the continent. Based on trailer 1, it seems likely her nation will be largely based on Africa, as that was definitely the vibe it gave off there. We later see her in a quite important moment, presumably face to face with the murderer of her own father. I can't help but wonder if the warrior we see from the back here is actually her father. I do see some similarities, although you would presume her father is the king, not some random warrior. She is flanked by what I would guess are retainers, both burly looking men. Both had already briefly been seen in trailer 1, which is how I know this eye patch pirate looking guy is actually not a pirate because he uses swords. Also worth noting is that Theodora isn't wearing her headgear here, which is seen in other cutscenes as well as her official portrait. While it is obvious from the cutscenes in the first trailer that Theodora uses lances, we later see her promote from axe user to wyvern rider, pretty much confirming the Wild West of reclassing as seen in Three Houses returns for Fortune's Weave. Interestingly enough, when Theodora uses her special technique here, it is a different one from what we saw in trailer 1. Back then she used the gambit Disturbing Strike, but here her special move is known as Earthen Throw, where she grabs a piece of rock and throws it at the enemy. But I have left the most interesting reveal for last. In this battle prep screen from an official screenshot, we can see Theodora has the crest of Gautier. She is related in some way to Sylvain of all people. I did not expect that. Oh, and her weapon of choice is called Mahadu's Spear. And fourth, we have Leda, the songstress looking for revenge, as was already confirmed in the first trailer. But hey, now we know who she is after, Lechner, a man she's ready to choke the life out of, and if you're not sure if she's serious, just take a look at her portrait here. Sheesh. Speaking of portraits though, it is worth pointing out that while they return to a drawn style after Engage just used the models, they are actually animated beyond just blinking. We can see that at one point when Kai is enjoying a meal with two other characters, one of which is called Alexandra. And yeah, her portrait is animated, it looks really cool. But back to Leda. She is in this shot flanked by presumably two allies, a girl with Sylvain's hair and a blonde with frilly hair. Frilly hair blonde is a mage, as we saw in trailer 1, just like the guy with the purple hair in the next shot. This is Sir Rocco, a crestless character who gets his moment in the spotlight later when he, as a shaman, takes out a Ceremonian knight. That is important because that means this knight is an ally of Theodora's. She is the queen of Seramis after all. This shot also seems to confirm the magic durability system from Three Houses returns, where each tome has a limited amount of uses per battle. We can see Sirocco's number going down here by 2 because he is gonna strike twice. To his left in that earlier shot is another new character with purple hair, and then there is the same guy we saw with Kai earlier. Is he an NPC? Or is he recruitable for multiple factions? We do later see Leda recruit a new character to her forces, while in the overworld, a woman named Nine, who also has an animated portrait by the way. Later on we see Leda very briefly use one of her blaze arts, Song of Passion, which was seen in the menu of the first trailer, but back then she used Song of the Beast to summon a demonic beast instead. Now, with these 4 characters cemented, one big question remains: are we choosing one of them, Three Houses style? It does feel likely. The voiceover of the trailer mentions guiding the character, so one, you choose the victory, and that they weave their own unique tale. That seems like a strong hint, and we see both Kai and Leda walk around in the overworld, which was of course previously the Avatar's role. But there is an interesting mystery. Where is the Avatar? Well, we barely see any hint of it in the trailer, but the cover art of the game introduces 2 characters very prominently that appear to be avatars. One male, one female, with a strong Byleth-esque vibe to them. Their name, according to the art book, is Eshmel, a name of Hebrew origin meaning God hears, and their design appears to be based on angels. And that is an interesting thing to consider when you keep in mind Byleth, who these characters do kinda resemble in a way. Byleth is known as the Ashen Demon. These characters are angel-like, that is a direct opposite between them. In the trailer itself, this character only very briefly appears, so not a lot can be deduced from that, but it is worth pointing out their weapon appears to lack a crest stone that would fit perfectly. Could they themselves be the crest stone, just like Byleth was? This is at least not the sword of the creator, for sure, so while there are Byleth comparisons to draw, it probably isn't straight up Byleth themselves. But as Avatar coded, as these angels are on the box art, are they actually the playable character? Well, I don't think so, at least not solely. In the overworld, we explore as Leda, as Kai, not as these characters, so unless something changes along the story, equivalent to the time skip in Three Houses, we probably don't play as these characters. They could instead be close allies, like Azura, or something else is going on entirely. Maybe it's like the Blazing Blade and the Avatar is a non-playable character. I'll touch on all of this later though, when we zoom in on the final segment of the trailer. But first, there are some more shots from the main section I want to slow down and pick apart. Because we also get an extensive look at the out-of-battle mechanics, a staple since Three Houses and the Garrick Mark Monastery, or honestly even Fates in my castle. It was already confirmed in trailer 1 we would be walking and exploring a hub world again, but we get more insight as to what we can do there here. Free time appears to take much more from Three Houses than it did Engage. The calendar is back, seemingly with another clear goal at the end of the month, which is begin the first match at first, and then we get 2 interesting insights. First of all, the month. We have until Septim 1, which is a brand new month that wasn't in Three Houses, showing that Dagda has a different calendar. As you might expect, Septim is September, as confirmed in the next shot, so we have the entire month of August basically to explore. And what we can do in that is limited to 172 turns. How exactly that is supposed to work is hard to say, but it seems the game wants to limit how much you can do skirmishes and the like. You have a set turn count for the whole month, which you will presumably need for the actual chapter battle, as well as any skirmishes or other battles you do in the meantime. These turns are not used for overworld activities though, because the arena a few shots later costs money and motivation to do, not turns, despite being a battle facility of course. When we see Kai walk over to that station, we can spot some interesting UI options. First, there is the map, which shows quite a lot of amenities close by. There was definitely a bit of a hassle in Three Houses, that the map was arguably bigger than was necessary, so now everything seems to be more huddled together like in the Somniel. At the bottom you can access the menu, open the map and open a book with X. That is very prominently placed here, it's very important, but it's hard to say what it's meant to be. Your unit roster? Could be, but that's usually in the menu. Same with saving, this is way too prominent to be a simple save your game. To the left of the UI we get reminded of what to do this month, our turn count, where we are, alongside an odd check mark, not sure what that is for, as well as some new elements compared to Three Houses, including the time of day as well as the weather. Are we gonna see variable weather? It was already hinted at in the first trailer as well, so it wouldn't surprise me. Focus on the actual time is interesting though, maybe we'll get time-sensitive events in the overworld? But most importantly of all, the year is mentioned here, 1449, which is almost 300 years after the events of Three Houses, assuming the year count is the same. Confirmed right then and there, Fortune's Weave is a sequel. And so far in the future that Witch Lord won back in Fogland probably won't have any impact. As the arena menu opens, we get a look at how training works, which looks remarkably similar to Three Houses. Do notice this boot icon here though, which was not in Three Houses and maybe an attempt to improve on infantry units. Perhaps we can level up movement again, for the first time since Freyja? That would be a big change. We also meet a brand new character, Oltand, who is officially a priest in this run-through, but for the special mounting training hops on the back of an Orneus for the occasion. After his training session, Kai learns a new combat art, being Raging Tempest, which he already used in the first trailer. We then get that shot of Leda recruiting Nine again, which I now will say I suspect will be possible in every route. And then another big reveal, a world map. For the first time since Awakening, or Shadows of Valentia I guess, we have a world map to explore beyond the walls of Daxian. And it appears to be a big focus this time, much bigger than ever before. We see symbols for fishing, shops, farming, what appears to be battle locations, mines or at least minecarts, and various green units scattered around, which are probably skirmishes or something similar. This is probably where we will spend a lot of our free time and our turns, and so I think this might be good news for those who felt Three Houses' free time was too overbearing. This looks like a simpler way to access and keep the same content, but time will tell whether that is actually true. The map does appear absolutely massive though, so we will probably be able to venture quite far from central Daxian in all directions. In the next shot we see Dietrich make quick work of a striped wolf, a new beast enemy, presumably on one of his travels outside of the city, looking at the scenery at least. Leda has also ventured outside, but she is doing something completely different. Is this a dungeon? Like in Shadows of Valentia? It does look awfully like it, although it could also be a post-battle exploration thing like Engage had. The menu here mentioning HP, magic and LP does suggest to me this is probably closer to a dungeon than simple exploration though, although Leda has yet to use a single turn to get here, so maybe it's not as combat focused as I think. After all, this tally at the top of the screen appears to indicate it may be some sort of treasure hunt instead. Either way, Leda has found a treasure chest containing a new weapon called Veroquin, a magic sword which allows for a new combat art called Prune. Stat-wise, this weapon is super basic, but still it has a lot of unique elements to it, so perhaps we will see a lot more unique and special feeling weapons like this in the game, to replace the standard steel and bronze weapons of old. It is noteworthy it has a curse stat, which we also saw back in the first trailer, but back then the curse stat wasn't filled in. This weapon has a curse of 2, what's up with that? And then we have this scene we already briefly mentioned, where Kai is having a meal with allies, confirming that mechanic is returning from the past 2 games. While we don't see anything concerning supports yet, I can't imagine they have been removed, and a mechanic like this is pointless without it, so let's call them soft confirmed. And in that light, I do want to point out that Shamir has a line in Fire Emblem Heroes where she mentions people in Dagda don't really care for gender when it comes to relationships, so it is possible that is a slight hint at the idea of everyone going both ways again romantically, which would match what Engage did. Okay, that was pretty much everything about the heroic games segment, let's move on to the final part of the trailer. And I have separated them like this to highlight something that stands out to me. Just like in the first trailer, everything involving Sophis and what seems like a grander story than just the heroic games and the 4 main characters is separated from the rest. There is zero overlap between the 2 segments, we don't see Sophis in a familiar setting and we don't see any of the main characters in this part either. Their only overlap is the Byleth looking angel who hails from this segment but shares the cover art with the 4 main characters. And perhaps the website for Fortune's Weave has revealed why. It calls the game a time-traveling saga. Well, that explains why the year was on the UI. We will be going through time, presumably frequently, and I wouldn't be surprised if that plotline doesn't get started until the heroic games are done and everything to do with Sophis and the angels is introduced. Which would explain why those are on the cover, but not walking around Daxian. But first, we are introduced to what I assume is the villain. She summons some sort of dark portal, out of which all kinds of monsters emerge, and appears to be holding a baby. Who might that be? It's hard to say. Also notice she has pointy ears and green hair, i.e. she is a Nagapedia. In that case, could the baby be the Grand Sovereign? He does match her looks. The range of monsters seen here also appears much more diverse compared to previous games. No more weird zombies only, we see giants here, beast-like creatures and more. It reminds me of the kind of monsters you often see in Zelda more so than Fire Emblem. This character then also gets a shot of looking shocked, presumably a hero who failed to stop the ceremony, but who she is, no clue. Her armor feels similar to what Theodora wears, but that is pure speculation on my part. And then the Angel arrives to wage war with the demonic foes. It's interesting that their weapon of choice is clearly a spear, which Kai and Theodora also use. Design-wise, we can see here they are obviously some supernatural being. They have what appears to be one wing, and their outfit reminds me a little of Arval from Free Hopes. That might just prove relevant. The same woman can be seen looking on as we get a better view of the scenery, which appears to be some sort of distant land. It wouldn't surprise me if this was set in the past, even further back than Free Houses. The ominous red sky is certainly a sign things are amiss here. During this segment, we first hear the presumably evil summoner speak, before then Sophis takes over and refers to the angel as the Promised One, which she probably wouldn't do if the angel was truly linked to Arval, like I speculated a few seconds ago. Underneath Sophis' talking, we hear a soundtrack that features voices that are identical to those used in Sophis' theme, Awakening, as well as Apex of the World in Free Houses. It has never been found out what these lyrics are supposed to be, so perhaps we'll have that answered when the motive seemingly returns in Fortune's Weave. We then see Sophis walk down a flight of stairs and presumably taunt her rival, asking how it felt to upheave the world. She draws a weapon, an axe, which does not resemble any of the known relics of Fodlan. The way this next shot is shown also reveals this moment happens right after the end of the first trailer, with Sophis striking down the person whose perspective we viewed that initial Sophis reveal from. She refers to them, probably the villain, as the Darkest Dark, which does suggest to me that while a lot of similarities can be drawn between Free Houses and Fortune's Weave, the answer as to who the villain may be is a bit more obvious this time and may not differ per route. It doesn't get more evil than the Darkest Dark, I would think. And then all there's left to show is the release date, September 17th this year, probably a little later than most expected, I would wager. And of course the collector's edition, the Dagden Collection, which appears to be a very similar idea to Free Houses' Fodlan edition. And do you see it, by the way? The angel is on the cover of the actual game, but the box for the deluxe edition only has the 4 main characters. With this edition you get cards, a poster, steelbook, artbook, very cool stuff, all for 120 bucks. The game itself will be priced differently physically and digitally, with the digital version being 70 and the physical 80, which is a pretty high price for those who prefer physical media, but at least the digital is pretty much as you would expect. And it is a Switch 2 exclusive of course, but I think we all saw that coming, right? That has been all I spotted, but I want to know of course, did I miss anything? And how excited are you after this more extensive look at Fortune's Weave? Share it in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a like and subscribing, and if you're also interested in either the Pokemon or Mario series, you may want to check out my other channels, Pichupedia and Beyontapedia. Links are in the description. For now, thanks for watching, and enjoy the rest of your day.